My name's Gary Stevenson. In 2011, I was Citibank's most profitable trader in the world. This is everything I'm authorized to tell you about being a trader for one of the world's biggest banks. You become the best.
Hey traders. So this is Gary. He was one of the most successful traders at Citibank. He literally pulled in millions. He did this interview where he revealed some of the secrets behind these millionaire firms. And I think he released a book as well. Some of you may have watched my channel before and knew that I ran a trading desk for a wealth manager for about 6 years. We weren't making nearly as much money as these guys though. I found this fascinating and I wanted to do a reaction video because I'm sure we had some pretty different experiences of the banking world.
When I started working, it was this kind of a bit of a mad environment. I'm always reminded of, you know, when you hear footballers talk about like footballers from like the 90s and the 2000s talking about when they came through and the stupid like hazing rituals and stuff. Like on my first week, they made me buy like 100 burgers and carry them up and like give them around the trading floor, this kind of thing. There was a lot of that kind of nonsense going on. And
so when I joined the industry, it was about 2012, back end of 2012. It was at the end of the global financial crisis. We'd already had the fallout. New regulations have already been brought in. So there was a lot more rules against this kind of hazing when I joined the industry.
It was really crazy for me. I was like super young and like some of the guys I was working with, like pretty crazy guys. And they started getting like really big for their boots. And
so these guys would have been trading with company bank-owned money. So they would have had prop trading accounts. They'd have been trading on behalf of the bank. We used to trade on behalf of the clients. We didn't have as much freedom and flexibility to trade on what we wanted to trade. Client picks up the phone and says, buy this, so we buy it. These guys literally were making their own decisions on their own accounts.
Take me out with all his clapper mates and like we'd be going to in Movida, which is a big expensive club. Like expensive.
You know, funnily enough, when I first joined the bank, there was a lot of going out and there was a lot of partying, but probably not to the extent that these guys are going. But that kind of died down slowly over time. I mean, there's a real cultural shift in the bank in the time that I was there.
Obviously, I know now that there's like this massive stereotype that traders take cocaine.
But maybe I was working in the wrong side of the banking world, but I never saw that amount of cocaine flowing around. Maybe it was just a different era. I mean, I obviously joined post-regulation coming in. I missed the good times. I wish I had joined the industry 10, 15 years earlier.
Since then, one of my colleagues who is very upset about the book came out and said like he spent, I think,
I'm not surprised. I don't know how he's managed to get away with releasing a book and an interview like this. I'd have been sued straight away by my firm if I'd started giving up secrets like this. I don't know how he's got away with this.
And then I think like, I better turn around now because like what has he done? And we used to have like all the computer stations were like behind these doors and he'd kick the door. So it like smashed into the brackets and he was just kicking like that. And he was turned around in his chair, like leaning over towards me like that. Like gnashing his teeth like a dog at me and growling.
Not seen to break down that badly, but we had a couple of characters. I remember there was one chap, I won't name him, he threw a computer screen at a wall, absolutely lost his mind. We had an incompetent assistant who hadn't done some work properly for him and he just lost his scrap. He had to be taken in a couple of times just to calm him down.
Their job is to help you get deals done, you know. You say I want to buy here and they're supposed to find a seller. But in reality, what they were doing a lot of is basically
business development people. The credit card limits on these guys is just unlimited. They can do whatever they want. The only way that we could spend that kind of money is if we were with the clients. We couldn't just do it on internal meetings.
Another guy wants to get taken on holidays. Another guy wants to go to sports events. But the truth is, when I got taken out by these guys, even when I went to Vegas, we were going to like celeb parties in LA and Vegas. For me, it was work. It was just work. And I was just trying to sort of be the Gary that these guys wanted me to be. And it was quite fun. I didn't really realise. Because most people that go in there now come from rich backgrounds. Their dad was rich, their mum was rich, their friends are rich. All their mates have similar jobs. All their mates go to these VIP clubs, you know, they're booking tables and they're going to fancy restaurants. For them, it's just part of their social scene. But
I don't know, a lot of the traders that I've come across, they all seem to be Cockney Londoners. You could tell if they're not there selling stocks and shares, they'd be down the market selling 2 apples for a pound and all that, wheeler dealers.
And then the next day, they're like, oh, can you do this deal for me? And then you realise like, oh, there's a kind of like hidden little quid pro quo here, which I wasn't really comfortable with. So eventually, like, I started to just like say, look, I don't meet no brokers. I don't go for no dinners. I instituted Nando's only rule. So for Americans who don't know what Nando's is a popular grilled chicken chain.
I did used to work with a guy who would exclusively only stay in hotels on business travel if it was within 50 feet of a Nando's. He got a lot of crap for that.
These guys are mainly people who couldn't cut it as traders, so they tried to like climb the greasy pole. And what they make their money on is basically internal politics. The kind of person who decides to make their money managing internal politics in an investment bank is usually a bit of a...
I better keep quiet here. I ended up going down the management route.
Who in the book we called the slug. I remember talking to like one of my mates on another trading desk, and he was like, "I tell you what, if he was your intern, you wouldn't hire him, would you?"
I've had a few managers like that, yeah.
My boss, who was a Swiss franc trader, quit, and a new boss got put in, and he was a really nice guy, but he seemed a little bit kind of like dopey in a way. And he come over one to introduce himself to me. And the way he introduced himself to me was he just sat down next to me and he pulled out a copy of Sports Illustrated and he flicked through the magazine. Like, he opens it like that to me. He's like, "Do you like that?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's nice." And he's like, did the whole one at a time. So he didn't even say hi. He didn't even say his name. And then I figured out this guy must be the new boss.
2 out of my 6 traders were women. I'd have been straight down HR with a harassment suit on me if I'd have done that.
Surely he knows what my job is. And there's this kind of moment where I'm looking at him and he's looking at me. And I'm thinking like... And I told him I'm the Swiss franc trader, which was my old boss's job. And he was just like, "Oh, right, okay. All right, fine." I love my second boss, but he was totally insane. I remember once he sat me down just like, "Gary, I really need to apologise." And I was like, "What for?" And he was like, "We can't give you a salary increase." And I'd never even asked for one. And the previous year I'd been paid £400,000. And he seemed genuine.
That just tells the difference right there. I mean, that's 4 times more than I was paying my traders. It's eye-watering the amounts of money that. I mean, these guys are authorised to take on a lot more risk on behalf of the bank. I mean, they have the potential to lose serious amounts of money for this bank. They might be making a lot of money, but they could be throwing it away as well.
And then he asked me what's wrong. And I said, "I think JB's phone's broken." So this boss just went over to the end, picked up a phone.
Yeah, I'm seeing the broken phones, seeing the phones thrown against the wall.
We sort it out between us. We don't go to HR. Because the truth is, a lot of people do dodgy shit. A lot of people get away with it. Because if you're making money on it, management, maybe it's changed, but management are not going to ask. I was making a ton of money, tons of money. Nobody ever asked how I was making it. Management never asked how I was making it because...
So 2012 to 2014, I mean, you know, people in the UK industry might know it, the Retail Distribution Review, I mean, just completely changed the way that the whole industry was regulated, really. Certainly on the retail side, these guys are institutional, they might have had different rules, but it became so heavily regulated from 2012 onwards. All of our bankers had to take exams. They all had to redo their certifications and qualifications. They weren't allowed to give advice to clients unless they'd read a 3-hour exam. I mean, the compliance just went absolutely crazy. I mean, it went too far in the wrong direction because it really limited the amount of business that you could do. I mean, we had clients sitting in front of us asking for advice on, you know, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And we had to sit there and say, "I can't talk to you about that. I'm not allowed."
P&L is profit and loss. And it's the only thing that matters in the world if you're a trader, basically. And every single day, every week, every month, every year, your individual P&L is calculated. Everyone's individual P&L is calculated. And it goes around on a spreadsheet every day.
Yeah, the old league tables. We had the league tables. I think that the problem with the league tables, though, is it created a negative environment. Certainly when I first started working for the bank, because the people that are at the top of the table, they are the big dogs and they walk around like they own the place. They get away with such bad behavior, but because they were making money, nobody was going to tell them off or step up to them. I think on the other side, if you were underperforming, then you'd get really heavily managed. And sometimes these guys just needed an arm around the shoulder, not a kick up the backside. It's something that really kind of transitioned throughout my time there. I mean, I spent 10 years at the bank, and by the time that I left, it was a much better, much more inclusive environment. You know, you didn't get this hierarchy of I'm the best, therefore I can do what I want. I mean, it still mattered at the end of the day for your bonus at the end of the year, but it was just a shift in culture kind of over that 10-year period.
$700,000. So much more than I've been expecting. And it kind of broke me a little bit. And I just became like, oh my God, there's so much money to be made here. It wasn't really till 2011 that I started to make some big bets. that's sort of the glamorous side of it, you know. Like
we used to have this saying, it was the model index. So the models, you Kate Mosses of the world, that she's not going to get out of bed unless she's going to get a contract worth millions. When you start off in the industry, you go for the small fry stuff, you go for your small clients, you go for your small trades, and as you get more and more experienced, and as you kind of build up your portfolio, you can start working out where your model index is, and you can only really have to give a damn if it's the bigger ticket stuff. You know, we had guys that wouldn't speak to a client unless they were worth more than 10 million, 100 million. You know, the smaller clients, the $500,000s, the 1 to 3 millions, they'd be passing them off. They'd say, it's not worth my time.
I made a ton of money on the Japanese nuclear disaster, not because I'd been expecting it to be a Japanese nuclear disaster, but because I was betting on it.
This has started to sound like Bobby Axelrod in Billions. That's a great show. If you ever watched that, give it a watch.
Well, some people the other way around, right? You know, some people would have lost a ton of money on the nuclear disaster. These guys' job is to bet on it and to be right on it. And they're very, very heavily incentivized to be right. The payment structure is very weird, or at least it was back then. You would get paid a lot of money in a bonus, but it would be like deferred. So you get this money in 4 years. Since I left banking, this rule came in, this EU law that limited bonuses as a multiple of salary, which meant that the way payment happened is completely changed. Now, because that bonus cap, what they will have to do instead is they massively increase your salary. And
yeah, not in all parts of banking. So a lot of places the bonuses were cut down. Yeah, he's absolutely right there. But the salaries and not in all firms have been increased that much. So what you've ended up with is bankers. You know, people aren't going to complain about bankers not making enough money, but the salaries are still relatively uncompetitive, and yet the bonuses are coming down and down as well.
I got very good grades, but turns out, and I didn't know this beforehand, the way to get a job is you have to get an internship in your second year. So you have to apply with CVs, and people at LSE would be sending like 35 CVs to different banks. But obviously, like, because they're from rich families, they've kind of prepped for this, right? So everybody has like some really cool extracurriculars, like they founded the Junior United Nations or some like concert pianist, you know. And I was like working in a sofa shop and like trying to become like a grime rapper when I was a kid. And so I was like, basically, because we can't get it. But I had quite a good rep as being like good grades, and he's a smart kid. A guy also in the math department from near above, I didn't know who he was, walked up to me in the library one day and just said, Citibank hire one trader you through a card game. It's basically a maths game. You should enter that and you'll win. So I was like,
it's all about connections. It's all about who you know. He had somebody that recommended him for his job. I had somebody that recommended me for my job. The best tip I could give any student or anybody wanting to get into the industry is to just talk to people, reach out to people on LinkedIn, because the best way to get a job is to get referred for a job. Don't just blindly apply for jobs. Find somebody in that firm who can recommend you for the job. People are usually more than happy to speak to strangers on LinkedIn. I mean, most people are normally happy to talk about themselves and willing to talk about their own job. So just reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, see you're in this role at this firm. I'm really interested to learn more about it. Can you share some of your insights? You know, people will usually respond positively to a message like that.
Citibank hire one trader you through a card game. It's basically a maths game. You should enter that and you'll win. Because the price was really high and my card was really low. But then when everyone turned their cards over, the other cards in the...
Never met a banker or a trader that didn't back themselves at poker.
Chances of it happening by chance, so like 1 in, or maybe like 15 million or something, ridiculously impossible chance. So I realised, I knew that the game must have been rigged. The guys who did come into the card game tended to end up being really good traders at the bank. This CV cover letter, there's a massive amount of classism in that. It's because everyone has the top grade. Basically, it's based on extracurriculars. It's based on how good you are at like clarinet, basically.
I don't know about the clarinet. I don't think it's a classist thing. I mean, fairly or unfairly, I think in my recruitment practices while I was working at the bank, I tended to favour people that had a sporty background, and not because they were from a particular class. I mean, it demonstrated the ability to work in a team and collaborate, potentially some leadership skills or competitiveness. I mean, these were kind of the qualities that I wanted to see in my staff. Maybe it was unfair against non-sporty people, and it's something I should have reflected on, but it tended to be the way that I recruited.
It goes away from being these kind of guys, ex-rugby players, and of which there used to be a lot of that kind of thing in banking.
There you go. I've been called out.
I think American Psycho is very good, actually. It's, it shows this guy who's in banking and becomes a murderer, and he's really clearly a dickhead. But I knew people at LSE that would memorise all of his lines by heart. And they loved him. And the reason is because he's really handsome, he's really rich, he's in great shape, he's got a really beautiful girlfriend, he's got a really expensive flat.
Yeah, I worked with people that could quote most of that film back to back.
I'd wake up at, say, 5:30. I used to 7:30 was like, you have to be in by 7:30, or you're late. So I'd be up at 5:30.
I tended to work the late shift. I couldn't do the morning shift. I'd start late, finish late.
The trading floors are all quite low down. These are the floors that are making the most money. Long, long rows of men with huge walls of screens, sort of 9 monitors, 12 monitors up in a big square rectangle around them. And most people will have that.
It's a habit that sticks with you as well. I've got at least 4 monitors here. I'm not working for the bank anymore.
I came in first day in a suit, and the guys were like, no suits, no ties. Whereas I think the European banks like Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank, they're like,
oh, I wore a suit all the way up until the lockdown started. At the beginning of the pandemic, we had to wear a suit in our place.
Really, there was a really big rush in the morning from sort of 8 a.m. to about 10:30 a.m. dealing with all the customers. So between 8 and sort of 10:30, 11 would just be a mad rush. But by then I'd be knackered. I'd go and get massive Nando's, sit there, smash my Nando's down. Then in the afternoon, it's actually quite chill because Citibank offers a 24-hour pricing service, which means there's a period.
Don't know about chill. I mean, the afternoons was the only time that we could get any work done. Once the clients had gone away, then you get on with your day's tasks.
See, I was about 24. I was, I'd cycle back home. I'd leave about 5, cycle home, go to the gym, cook dinner with my flatmate, watch the football if it's on. Obviously, I'm waking up at 5:30, so, I wasn't like big on the nightlife.
I don't know. I think we were the opposite. If you went home early, then you weren't doing a full day's work. We used to have to stay till 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, 9, 10 o'clock in the evening sometimes.
You were the risk holder. Your job was to be the person who made the decisions and took the risk, and who took the hit if you were wrong.
Well, that's why you get paid the big bucks.
First thing says, there's lots of different kinds of traders trading lots of different kinds of things. I was an interest rates trader. It means I was borrowing and lending money. Interest rates traders borrow and lend money. And the idea is quite simple. You want to borrow at a low interest rate and you want to lend at a high interest rate. So a lot of what is done on that desk, the STIRT desk, the short-term interest rates trading desk, is one-day loans. Although we are also looking at inflation. Really, we're trying to judge the strength of economies. In my desk, there were about 10 traders, and each trader's job was to look at a different currency, and you kind of get promoted through the ranks. It's split between what you'd call rich world currencies and what they call emerging market, poorer country currencies. So on my desk, the rich world desk, we're basically doing Europe, Japan, North America, Australia, New Zealand. First, I was, desk junior, buying the coffees. Then I was New Zealand dollar trader. Then I was Swiss franc trader. Then eventually I was Euro trader. Then I moved to Japan and I was yen trader.
I mean, a lot of it's automated nowadays. You don't really get these such specialisms in these regions because it's all done by algorithms. It's all automated.
Towards the end of my career, I decided I want to leave, and I tell my boss I want to leave. And my boss takes me out for this dinner, and he told me a story about a trader, a young trader at Deutsche Bank who, nice guy, good trader, wanted to leave. The only problem is Deutsche didn't really want him to leave, so they went through looked through some of his past trades and his emails, There wasn't really anything in there, but there was enough, There was, enough to take him to court, and he rolled through court for years.
So I've never heard of any scenarios of people actually being sued. I mean, there are rules. You can't approach clients. You can't take the clients with you. You can't approach staff. When I left the bank, I went to set up a fintech, algorithmic trading software. I'll tell you more about it at the end of the video. But I was told when I left about a story of somebody who had left the bank a few months before, went to work for a new bank's chief risk officer, tried to take a few compliance staff with him and was basically told hands off. But it's very difficult to prove, though. They have to actually be able to prove that you proactively contacted the clients or the staff and that you elicited them to move with you. If the client turns around and says, I noticed you've moved, or I've seen on LinkedIn that you've moved bank, I'd like to move my account to you, then they're allowed to do that. They can approach you. You just can't proactively approach them. But it's very difficult to prove in a court.
Like, I want to leave and work for charity, and the banks are just, the senior management is just very strongly implying, well, we're going to see you. And in the end, two things happen simultaneously, which is I start sending these mad emails every day to like the CEO and the global head of HR. And one guy got fired, and then I get let out. So I don't really know whether it was because I started going mental and causing big problems, or if it was because this guy got fired. And I'll never know.
Well, I mean, that's one big cultural shift in the whole industry in the last 10 years. I mean, he left the bank in 2011. I probably started about a year later. We're now in 2024. It's so difficult to fire people nowadays, to come up with reasons to fire people that don't land you in an employment tribunal. There's so much protection for employees and nowadays. I mean, I've heard some great stories from back in the day when people used to get marched into an office on a Friday. If you were called into one of these Friday 5 o'clock meetings, then you probably weren't going to be let back up to your desk again. Somebody would meet you at the back door with your box of your stuff in it, and that was it. You were gone.
Did you have to sign any NDA or like keep any secret?
I'm not allowed to answer that question, unfortunately. Legal reasons. I'd love to tell you, but I can't answer it. Yeah.
Fascinating story. Really interesting guy. And I think the most interesting thing is the fact that they were still doing all this trading manually. I mean, nowadays, everything is automated, everything is algorithmic, and that's just the way the world's going. And technologies are getting smarter and smarter, that these algorithmic trading softwares are more accessible to the likes of you and me, not just the big firms and hedge funds. The introduction of trading platforms like your Robinhoods and your eToros and your OKXs and things that make trading more accessible to the retail users, those sort of things just wouldn't have been around 10, 15 years ago. When I personally automate all of my trading strategies through our Algo. It's a completely free software. You can build, backtest, and run automated trading strategies without needing to know how to write code. You can hook it up to your accounts with Binance, Coinbase, Bybit, or BingX, and it's got over 100 indicators that you can build into your strategies. I'll leave a link in the description below. Go and check it out. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Give it a like and a comment if you have. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Happy trading.